What do you think is the crux of, like, if you had to describe the crux of your reporting in this Wired article, like what would you go with there? How would you describe it? It's like the main points.
Yeah, I think the main point is basically like what I want people to walk away with.
So, just if you guys haven't watched me for a while, my main issue and the thing that I went to, like, you know, press Destiny on, and that I've been trying to press other content creators on more ever since this started, ever since it first came out, was 1630 did not fund Chorus. That is the main thing that I wanted to get across, and I really hope that he knows this by now, and that Hutch has said something about it, because I did see that, like, Lonerbox even ended up mentioning this after I brought it up to Destiny, and a couple other content creators started bringing it up as well. So it is Destiny tweeted at Taylor Lorenz saying, hey, you're fucking wrong. 1630 does not fund Chorus. You just fucking lied about that. And it's annoying to me that it took it was like a year for people to actually start mentioning this shit. But yeah, I knew this like within like a couple of days. I was going off about the fact that 1630 did not fund Chorus. Chorus pays 1630. It's literally the other way around. It's literally the fucking opposite of what it is she said. And so yeah, she just like blatantly got this information wrong. And while she's running around saying, well, we have editors, we have editorial standards, I couldn't just put misinformation in this. It is objectively incorrect that 1630 funds Chorus. It is just objectively wrong. She is just blatantly factually wrong on that. While she's, and that is the crux of her article, is that 1630 is funding Chorus, and therefore all of these content creators, she says, they disclose, because a lot of people, she's like, they didn't disclose that they were working for 1630, and a lot of people said, no, they said that they were working for Chorus. They disclosed that they're working for Chorus. And she says, no, they disclosed that they were working for Chorus, not 1630. They're working for 1630. 1630 is who pays them. So they're only working for 1630. And they never disclosed that. That is fucking bullshit. That's a lie. So I'm hoping that Destiny covered it, but Hutch doesn't much, maybe a little. Okay, to me, that is the most important part. Like, it is every time somebody engages with her, every time somebody talks to her, Destiny twice now, it feels like a failure at every point if they do not bring this up. This is the most important part. This is the biggest part of misinformation in her article that ends up demeaning all of the content creators who did disclose that they were working for Chorus. All those content creators who did disclose and they did say that they were working for Chorus, she still says that's not good enough, because they should have said that they're working for 1630, not for Chorus. And so it is just absolute fucking bullshit. Do we know where 1630 spends all of their money? I get that they are a fiscal sponsor and what that entails, but I'm curious if it's possible that they also donate money. That they also donate to Chorus? Or to other places? It's possible. It's not outside of the realm of possibility, but again, that's not her issue. That's not, again, her issue, again, is not that dark money exists. Her issue is, again, that if content creators take money from dark money, they need to disclose it. She says all the time, I'm not against people taking money from dark money. Like, if they can't take money from dark money, we can't compete against the Republicans and the conservatives who do this all over the place. So, like, we have to be able to compete. We just need to be more transparent with it. Okay, that is what the fucking content creators with Chorus did. They did disclose this shit, and you still disparage them for it. So yeah, whether or not Chorus gets money from 1630 still wouldn't matter. She was saying that they are funded by 1630, not that 1630 donates to them. Whereas like a Chorus says that they're grassroots funded, that like their money all comes from just people making small donations. We can't know if that's true, but
kind of what you just said, which is that like this massive notorious dark money group is funding this program that influencers.
See when they ask what is it that you think people should get from this massive dark money group is funding Chorus. No, they're not. Hutch goes in a completely different direction. Let him cook. Okay, all right. I hate this. It's so fucking annoying. All right.
Took part in that claim to be journalists, and that these influencers basically were taking undisclosed political money while promoting political messaging. For instance, I think that let me just give an example. So I think that consumers and viewers, readers, whatever, right, like news consumers deserve the right to know if the person that they're receiving information from is, one, taking political money, and two, taking part in like messaging sessions, like getting, sort of information given to them by certain political interests, whatever, right? I think that they should know that. Journalists, for instance, like myself, anybody that basically works in mainstream media, you cannot take part in any dark money political funding. That would be so unethical. It would violate every single ethics. You could never do that and work in mainstream media. But I think the problem with influencers is that, listen, and I have friends in that program, but like some of them, it's like, whatever, they're political influencers. They don't feel like they have to disclose it. I think they should disclose it. But there are a lot of other people in those programs that are calling themselves journalists. And a lot of them actually wanted to disclose it. That's how that article came to be, is that 7 people in the program came together, 7 of them, and were like, hey, we wanted to disclose it. We want to post about it. We're being told that we're not allowed to, and we'll be kicked out of the program if we actually publicly disclose it. We think this is really wrong, and we want to blow the whistle on it. We've recorded all these Zoom calls. Here's screen recordings of all these internal text messages. Here's, internal documents. Here's all of the contracts. Here's all the contract negotiations. Here's all the internal guidance on what we're supposed to respond to, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, great, okay, well, let me reach out to Chorus and 1630 and talk to them about this. And obviously they didn't want to talk.
One thing I hoped that Destiny would have asked her in the last thing is when she kept saying like, yeah, some of them disclosed X, Y, and Z, but they didn't disclose the funding scheme, is what she kept saying. They didn't disclose the funding scheme, and that's what they're a part of. That's the fucking thing, the funding scheme. I wish Destiny had gotten more information on what the difference between these two things are, the funding scheme and the others, because even when I talked to Pisco, he didn't know what that was. Even when I talked to Destiny, he didn't know what that was. So I don't know what the difference is between the funding scheme and like what we're talking about here. But then on top of that, I would have liked to hear like them ask her, okay, give me an example. So give me an example of what it is that they would say. Tell me what does this disclosure sound like? They say, hey, I am X content creator. I am part of this. I am this, like, tell me what is it that you want them to say specifically. Give me an example of how it would sound to you if it was disclosed in the correct way. And nobody ever asks her to do that because I don't understand it. So
on the record, but I hope that people from that article demand more from the content creators and demand that these content creators, are more transparent about funding. And most importantly, because I don't even think it should all be on the content creators' fault. As I said, so many content creators did want to disclose and they were told they'd be kicked out of the program if they did. The people that run these programs, Courier Newsroom. I don't know if do you guys know Tara McGowan, Courier? That's
no, I heard
crazy.
you talk about them before, but
yes, they're like
familiar.
the other big. You guys should. That's like your type of. That's like the other big lib like thing that funds all the Democrat stuff. Like,
oh, you're not a lib, Taylor?
Listen. I love the libs. I'm not hating on anybody, but
hang on a second. You like free speech? You don't like the libs?
I do. No. I actually really like a lot of people I like a lot of people in Chorus, and I like a lot of people in all these programs. But
and I have black friends, Taylor.
What'd you say?
I'm not a racist. I have 5 friends.
No, but I'm saying like that program is run transparently.
Bro, I was just thinking the same thing. She is playing it like trying to do this like, oh, I don't hate the libs. I have friends who are libs. It's like, okay, I don't hate black people. I have friends who are black. Fucking based, dude. Fucking based from Soy Pill. Hell yeah, let's get some W's for that one. That was good.
Right? There's
Good
a lot of
shit.
other funding programs that are run transparency. Even Crooked Media, you could consider sort of a form of this, although it's quite different. It's a media company. But
so overall, though, you're putting the emphasis on disclosure. You think the crux of your article was about disclosure?
I think it's about disclosure, and also unpacking what sort of, basically, if you sign a contract that says, if I take part in chorus-based events and that puts restrictions on my content, that should be disclosed.
We'll get to that because that's worth diving into. But to your point on the disclosure, okay, so the section in your article where you dealt with the specific provision in the contract that barred the creators from disclosing that they were a part of a fund, like a dark money fund.
The program. They talked that they were part of the funding program.
Right.
Yeah.
That I think was probably the strongest part of your article, because I think that does raise ethical concerns that are worth exploring and discussing and hashing out and kind of collectively deciding like what should the ethics be. But we'll get to some of that.
Well, they came out after. I mean, these content creators, several of them came out after the story came out and said, we're proud to take dark money and we don't owe you anything. So I think that's the energy that some of these content creators have. And I think that's a huge disservice. I think if they start to play that game, they're going to lose. Like that's not, you have the disadvantage in that system. The right has significantly more dark money than the left will ever have.
Well, let me
ask, was it in writing that they couldn't disclose? I don't know.
Yeah, it's in their contract. Yeah, it was in their contract. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay. I got to hit one thing at a time here. I feel like
I think the contract was open to interpretation for that part. Like me and Pisco went in circles on this for like an hour, but yeah, my overall issue is that I think like that is a way that you can read it, and I think that's an obvious way that you can read it. I don't think it's disingenuous to read it that way or anything, but I do think that like acknowledging that it doesn't necessarily mean this is really important for fair journalism. Like that is I think the idea of like, Tom is fair or whatever, like the main way that I think about that isn't that like I'm overly charitable and believing people who aren't believable or anything, but giving the possibility that when something is done or something is said, that it could be that there are other possibilities that are still open, that like we can't make hard claims that X did for sure happen. And this is something that's happened to me numerous times. There's like a whole Reddit scandal about me from a while back that like people were very sure about something that I understood why they thought that in the first place, but then ended up being proven wrong after a long period of them just being very, very sure of themselves and then being just completely incorrect in the end. The idea that like the most obvious thing is the only possibility is kind of annoying to me. What did they think? It was I had a sister and a roommate a while back who were like going and posting stuff on Reddit for me, and I had friends who I would also like send links to post shit on Reddit because I couldn't figure out like how to make a post on Reddit. I could only figure out how to comment, and then I had like a shared computer with people to where we used the same accounts, and then eventually just ended up swapping accounts at some point, or my roommate ended up using my accounts, and so posts from him looked like they were posts from me, and there were compliments about me or even hating on me or making fun of me or saying or glazing me or like the whole fucking spectrum but from my roommate at the time who was helping me with shit. And so the people very quickly ran around saying, Tom's glazing himself, he's propping himself up, he's doing this, he's doing that. And yeah, it was a whole thing. So because Tom's a boomer, he needed non-boomers. Cute. God, I mean, I don't know if Reddit's like a boomer non-boomer thing. I just same 566 thing. I don't know, maybe. But yeah, and so then once my sister and my roommate come out, they're like, no, those are our accounts. Like, even after I told everybody, I'm like, that's my sister and my roommate. They're like, oh yeah, sure, buddy, okay, good one. So then once they come out, they're like, no, those are our accounts. Like, we posted that shit. The most of those people still thought that they were lying or whatever, but the point is that like you can see something that like seems like there's an obvious conclusion to come to, and that when there's room for interpretation, I feel like it's necessary to like leave that open for that possibility, even if you're going to go with what is most likely.
Like you hit on like 5 things that I want to unpack, but
Okay.
I want to keep my train of thought here. So the second question that I have for you is I think it was in your conversation with Pisco where you were speaking about the importance of journalists and editors disclosing their partisan beliefs in their reporting. Was that your conversation with Pisco or on Doomscroll?
No, well, I don't think that you have to do that. I say that, for instance, one reason that I really like to be independent is because I like to make my views clearer on where I stand on certain issues. I think that makes me a more accountable reporter because when I'm open and I disclose, hey, I'm coming to this issue with this perspective. Am I wrong? Like, I mean, I go to sources with this all the time where I'm like, well, this is my view, you know?
Well,
Now you
Taylor,
tell-
in the interest of transparency, earlier, I know we're being friendly here, but you do hate Democrats and libs, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you hate
Sometimes
Democrats
they
and
drive
libs.
me
I'm
crazy.
pretty sure I've heard you say
I want them to
this.
win. I hate them because they keep losing. I want them to win. I want them to be
Okay.
Republicans. But I mean, obviously, obviously, I mean, I don't want the Republicans to win there, especially not Donald Trump. He's a fascist.
But on this point though, like I think you did.
But I do like what my point.
Well, when you cut liberals, fascists bleed. So what's the difference, really?
Is like if you are a journalist, especially if you're a public independent journalist, I think it's to your benefit and to the public's benefit for you to be transparent. And I think one reason people don't like mainstream media is that mainstream media will put out content that clearly has a political slant. You know, certain writers at The Atlantic, for instance, right, that like are going to skew a certain way, but they can't come out and say it. And to me, that's a flaw in our media ecosystem. I think that you should be transparent.
Would it be up to the journalists to disclose that kind of slant in the reporting itself?
No, because it depends on your slant. Like, what are you talking about? Like, for instance, I cover identity verification laws. I'm very critical of ID verification laws. I'm very anti-surveillance. When I talk to the guy at the Age Verification Association, the trade group, I say, listen, I'm a huge critic of these laws. Convince me why I'm wrong. The goal of an article, like a journalistic article, is to be factual and truthful, and to get people to understand, you know, sort of the truth of a situation.
Right.
I don't. Again, she's right and she's wrong. Like, I think that sometimes people's bias, like it definitely can matter in a lot of different ways. But the problem that I have a lot of times is that people act as though like having a bias means that you have to act on that bias, and that's really frustrating for me. Like, I feel like a lot of times when I moderate a debate or a panel, like I try to take my bias out of it and ask questions from other people's point of view, and like steelman other arguments and crap like that. And I feel like, okay, so just because I have a bias, a lot of people are, why would I have TOMFOOLERY moderate the panel? He has a liberal bias. And it's like, literally everybody has a bias. Literally, if you're looking for a moderator who doesn't have a bias, you're never going to find that person. You just can't have moderators. That's fucking retarded. But sure, I'm open with my bias and saying that I'm a liberal or a Democrat, but I don't think that I need to be in order to moderate in an unbiased manner. And I think that that's like, I think that journalists are capable of doing journalism in an unbiased manner to where they are just stating facts, just stating like what sources say, just stating like what is true. Obviously, you can't put all information ever in a single article, and so maybe your bias like will play into what parts you do and don't say, or what parts are or aren't covered. But I don't think bias is always like as important as people think it is. It's an aspect, but I don't think it's as important. For if you're capable of being a fucking professional, then like that's that.
It's not necessarily to share your opinion on something. Some articles do contain more opinion, but most sort of like investigative work, or especially something like this, it doesn't have my opinion in it. Also because like 15 people worked on this article, and my original draft was so like, you know, it goes through like so much sort of editing and review, and so many people work on it, that it's just like the end product is mostly a result of like, what did the legal, you know, how do we need to sort of reword this so that it's legally factual and, you know, and stand up to some like defamation lawsuit, because that's what they kept threatening.
Well, my sense of this particular reporting is that I think you do have a slant, and I think you do. I think your opinion is
my slant is probably, I mean, as you can read from all my Wired reporting, it's against dark money, and it is a transparency.
Well, no, that's not the slant that I'm talking about. I think you have an anti-establishment slant. I think you've discussed. You've
chorus is anti-establishment.
Well, hang on, real quick. You've described yourself as on the left, or I think you even hinted that you were identified with the label of leftist. I think in your conversation with and when you read the article, it's like really clear that you have villains in the story and you have heroes in the story, and you have kind of a larger narrative that I think goes beyond
but like 15
right?
people were right, but like my name is on the top. But as you know, with an investigation like this, especially one that went to the top, that like 15 people worked on this story. So
well, I understand that, but like for example, so you assigned the label centrist to Olivia Juliana,
which is how she self-identified.
No, she self-identifies as a progressive, right?
No, from what I found from my original reporting back from the New York Times, back when I had interviewed her years ago, she was identifying as a centrist Democrat back in Texas. That was her whole thing. In 2024? Maybe it was whenever I spoke to her, which was quite a while ago. But just to be clear, she never took issue with.
Yeah, I everything that I saw from her was that she was a progressive, and that she was like very you know, anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, and that it was really surprising when she called her centrist, because I thought that does not align with the very little bit that I knew of her. That was wasn't that the girl who conservatives were all of a sudden like running around like, oh, they think that what Democrats are putting this fat girl up as the you know, savior for young men. The Democrats think she's gonna be the one to pull young men over. This is so stupid. Like, wasn't that the girl? Yeah, okay, yeah, that she definitely identified as progressive. For as long as I've known about her, she identified as progressive, so I don't know what the fuck she was looking at. It's like, that sounds like, you know, going and finding shit about me from 2024, 2023, and saying like, you know, yeah, he identifies as conservative. Like, all right, motherfucker.
With that, she never reached out for a correction on that at all. We would have been happy to, like, if she
I mean, nonetheless, that is an opinion, right? Subjective. It's a very subjective label.
No, it was how she. Well, first of all, I think we can correctly identify people's political sort of affiliations. For instance, if she's, correct me if I'm wrong on Olivia Juliana, and Olivia Juliana works for Chorus, but her whole thing was that she was a Democrat in Texas, right, who had done a lot of work with like reproductive justice.
Yeah, right. So she focuses on abortion, LGBTQ plus, climate, voting rights. When I look at these sort of policy priorities, that does not strike me as when I think of a centrist, I think of Joe Manchin.
Okay.
I think of like Jared Polis in Nebraska. Right?
If Olivia wants to reach out, and we honestly, the thing that you're bringing up mostly comes up on the right, because for instance, when I've covered Nick Fuentes, he will say, well, I'm not a white nationalist, or Chuck Johnson, who I cover all the time, or not so much anymore, actually, he's less relevant.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when it comes to corrections, most people are not gonna reach out for a correction on things like that unless you say, like, they self-identify as X. Then what a fucking loser, dude. They self-identify as X, then sure, the self-identify statement might be like a thing to get a correction on, but because there is like a lot of subjectivity in the terms, I think that it feels petty to reach out for a correction on something like that.
But he would constantly say,
especially when like leftists like Taylor Lorenz will call people like me a conservative, right? Like, especially when people, leftists will call, people like me a conservative or right wing. It just, like there's so much subjectivity in there that it just starts to feel weird.
well, I'm not a Holocaust denier, right? And so I think at some point you do have to take a look at certain people's, beliefs and what they've expressed and try to categorize.
How would you define
correctly.
centrist? How would you define centrist?
A Democrat? A Democrat that's probably very middle of the road, like a middle of the road Democrat, like a Democrat that could operate in a red state, probably.
A Democrat? That's it? Just a Democrat is a fucking centrist? I agree with that, like in a very esoteric sort of way, I guess. Like, when you look at politics today, the right has just gone so far right that when you look at progressives, you look at leftists, you look at conservatives and, MAGA, that like liberal Democrats today are the centrists of America. Like that, the spectrum has kind of stretched so far to the right that yes, like we are kind of centrist now. Well, not just to the right, but it's stretched to the left as well. So where, like we are just kind of the centrists today. But in like ordinary American politics, we use terms like left and right most of the time, especially when she's writing an article, in for like a group like that, like a larger syndicated article. It should just be kind of like reflecting left or right, Democrat, Republican. As for liberal or conservative, and then progressive when they become a bit more anti-establishment sorts.
And a blue state maybe equal, like somebody that's sort
very
of appeals
broad
to both.
though. That's a very, very broad.
Well, it's kind of like the centrism itself. Like as I think about and sit here, there's a kind of identified more Schumer-oriented Democrat, more moderate Democrat associated with a centrist label.
Well,
and it is kind of vague, right? It's a kind of vague
but
term.
also like I wouldn't say that the chorus. I mean, chorus has made content with Schumer. Like I guess I would say it's a very vague term. It's probably the most broad term because I don't think we want to get it again like too specific.
The important thing here, Taylor, is to Hutch's point, based on, and I found this when I read your article too. You use centrist as like a pejorative, right?
No, for this one we say that like when
no in general you do. You've used you don't like the Democrats and you especially don't like centrist Democrats. This
I
is
am
just like
centrist
your
on
ideological
certain issues. I think it depends on the type of.
Do you use centrist as a pejorative?
I'm centrist on certain issues. What the fuck? What the fuck? I'm centrist on certain issues? All right.
You centrist as a pejorative, right? Like you view these people as like these feckless do-nothings, and like I
think you're completely putting words in my mouth that I have not said. I think I don't like Chuck Schumer, and there's a lot of what he says, but there's a lot of people that are quote unquote centrist that I absolutely respect and work with, and that worked on this article. Like there's people just to be clear, this article went through so many editors that have such a range of political beliefs. And I hear you that maybe you disagree that Olivia Juliana is classified as we described her, a centrist Gen Z influencer who spoke at the 2024 DNC.
I
she
think
has
when you
not
look at
taken
her,
issue with that, and
well, that's not really that's beside the point. I
Wait,
mean,
but you
whether or not
basically
she disputed
disagree
it, I
with-
think
you
that I think
disagree with
if
a-
most people, well, hang on, just let me real quick.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be. I'm not trying to cut you off very much. So just let me say what
Okay,
I think.
sorry.
Like, I think if like a reasonable person went to Olivia Giuliana's feed and they saw her policy priorities, I think that they would colloquially understand her to be just sort of like a standard Gen Z progressive Democrat who's focused on progressive issues.
Progressive is also the reason progressive has come up so much, and somebody was trying to get me to write a story about this recently, which I was like, this is not really my beat, is because so many people have tried to replace the word centrist with progressive, and this has been like a thing that influencers were actually given. This is totally separate from my story.
I feel like she's just describing liberal. She keeps saying they've tried to replace the word centrist with progressive. No, people have replaced liberal with progressive. That's a real thing. But nobody's replaced centrist with progressive. What the fuck is she talking about? Who the fuck did that? That just... I'm trying to think of like some good faith way of interpreting this. This is absolutely insane. Who the fuck did that?
And this is like something else. Maybe I'll write about it. I don't know. Probably not. But there is an effort as certain words become stigmatized or have negative, maybe you're saying this has like a negative view with some people, they're trying to use other words. So you see them use the word progressive instead of centrist or the word whatever.
No. I'm not talking about self-assigned labels. I mean, I think most people would look at her policy proposals and think, okay, that's just like
what do you think about Biden, Hutch? I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, so if Biden were described as a centrist Democrat,
Olivia Giuliana was a Biden dead ender, so she absolutely is a Biden Democrat.
That does not.
Would you describe Biden as progressive?
Hang on, yes,
AOC and Bernie were Biden dead
exactly,
enders,
yes, AOC and Bernie Sanders
were. describe them as Democrat. I guess they're not.
AOC is
they're progressives, right? They're progressives, right? That didn't make them as centrists.
I would call them democratic socialists, right?
Well, listen, if you had to choose between progressive and centrist,
democratic socialists are considered part of the progressive branch. That is, like, democratic socialist is part of the progressive group. That's what that is. That is progressive. I am starting to realize there's a massive issue with these labels right now, where she's saying like they tried to replace centrist with progressive, and now she's saying that democratic socialist is different from progressive. She's got some weird issues with these terms.
Centrist to describe AOC and Bernie, what would you choose?
It totally depends on the context of the article.
I feel like you're being
because
a little
Bernie has
evasive
been
there.
because look at what Bernie's been doing with his AI policy. Like I think
nobody would call him a centrist. Nobody
I wouldn't call him, but I
him
wouldn't call him progressive either on certain things.
AI policy.
I don't understand what these words mean anymore. I mean, like more broadly, you said that there were 90. Did you see a list of 90 people? Is that how many people you saw?
So just to be clear, I understand that you take issue with the way that editors categorize these people, but
that's an opinion, though. You're inserting.
It's not an opinion. Well, this is Chuck Johnson saying that us calling him a Holocaust denier is an opinion, or us saying that Tucker Carlson is a right winger is an opinion. All we can do is try to best reflect the ideology that often we use self-described ideologies.
Okay, no, wait. They need to point to that and say that's true. They need to point to that and say that's true. Yes, that like the people within their groups would not call themselves white nationalists or Holocaust deniers or things of that nature, right? That is true. That is part of the bias that they're saying it would make sense if you disclose this, because you're obviously much farther left to where you see these terms in a totally different way than they are used colloquially. Whereas like in those groups, yes, that is true, that those people would deny that they are Holocaust deniers or white nationalists or whatever. Like that is very true, but that is not that is proving the point that like when you think a Democrat is a centrist, or you think people are trying to replace progressive or centrism with progressivism, like your bias obviously is misleading you on how these terms are used. They need to like she is giving them like a perfect fucking layup right there to be like, yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes. They do not consider themselves those things because they're in a different they view them as like a different thing than the way that we view it.
But all we can do,
I think she self-describes as a progressive at this point. So that's where I'm a little bit confused.
At this point, maybe, but I would say again, if you ask actual people that are further to the left than her, they will say not. So
well, that's the issue. That's the issue.
Right, and that's
people call Bernie Sanders a centrist, but it's not accurate.
No, but that's the issue because I think you're framing your article from the position of like the left.
But I didn't even write that line. So like
well, your name's on the
Of course, but I want you to understand how journalism works, right? Okay.
Oh my goodness, not this again.
It's not just that Wired is my personal blog and I can go and
not this
write
again,
whatever
dude.
I want, right? And I can just go and publish on
you have because your name is on the articles, you have the ability to say like, I don't stand behind this wording. I do not stand behind this and say that you don't want to publish based on changes that like you don't think are accurate. Like yes, the editors like CNN can say, no, we're not publishing something that looks like this. We're not putting our brand on an article like this. You have the same ability to say, yeah, I don't want to put my name on an article like this. But she always does this thing where it's like, oh, I need you guys to understand how journalism works. And it's, that isn't, you're giving a distinction without a difference here.
Wired and nobody's going to look at it, right? No, especially with an investigation like this, the way it happens is I find information, right? I get people trying to whistleblow in this case about a program that they're in. And I go to an editor and I say, hey, I have all of this source material, all of this people, would you be interested in a story? Yes. Okay. I work with that editor to draft the story. It then goes through rounds, in this case, rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of review from many different editors that not only transform the story, rewrite parts of the story, add things, take things away, but also then it goes through legal review. Then it goes through copy edits and stuff. Like
yeah,
it goes through. So, but I just want you to understand, because I think, yes, my name is at the top of the story because this is my reporting. This is my reporting that I brought forward fundamentally. But if you're going to take issue with like random sort of characterizations, and again, I understand.
I don't think it's random. I think it was deliberate. I think it was deliberate.
Okay, well, I guess.
Why don't you get to there? I mean, like, why don't you go there and just ask Taylor?
The copy editor.
I'm trying to have a conversation with her. I don't know why you're jumping in here.
No, because it's kind of a stupid critique to be like, hey, centrist. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. Like, yeah. Really? So Joe Biden would describe himself as a centrist Democrat, correct? Yes or no?
No.
Wait. Can you answer that first? Can you answer that? So the question you should ask. The question you should ask is, Taylor, did you?
Let me finish my track.
The question that you should ask is, Taylor, were you attempting to imply something nefarious when you use centrist there? Were you trying to imply that they were aligned with the DNC?
Well,
ask the question about her intention.
Listen, Taylor, respectfully, I think you were doing that. I think
I didn't even write that. I wrote the list of influencers' names. I didn't even originally.
Well, here we have another spot here where you say that.
Wait, Hutch, before you do the next thing, because
I can't.
Taylor, you did say that I was putting words in your mouth, but if you search on your Twitter centrist, it's very clear that you use this as a pejorative term, and like that can be your opinion. That's fine, but to claim that that's not like your ideological spin is a little frustrating.
But I would say, in what context is it? Is in what context? Because I think, certainly, do I get annoyed?
Oh, yeah, she straight up denied this just a little bit ago. She straight up denied that she does that just a minute ago. Oh, this is now it's well, I mean, in what context though? Because yeah, like sure. Oh man.
Right, at certain centrist people, sure.
I think that there was an intention there to be disparaging, and I think it's broader than that.
Okay, but this is just honestly, I didn't write the sort of things. It's fine if she had taken. Just let me finish instead of just let me finish.
Well, you have been cutting me off pretty consistently throughout this entire exchange.
All right. Well, then this is just not going to be how we're not going to be able to have a conversation because we're talking about a story that was edited by so many people, and I don't know what to tell you other than
Okay, so are you distancing yourself from that label?
Oh my God! If Olivia Juliana had reached out after that story and said, "You grossly mischaracterized my views. I'm not a centrist. Take it out. You mischaracterized it, whatever," I would have been happy to bring that to the editor, and the editor could have.
Well, I hate how she always does this, where like somebody's trying to point out an inaccurate thing. They want to challenge her on this, and she's always, "Oh, I'm happy for people to challenge me on my reporting. That's great." But then every time they actually get to like the crux of the issue, it always turns into like, well, if they thought that that was wrong, they could reach out to legal and have it changed, okay? Like, but they didn't. We haven't made any retractions. So like, that's that. It's like, okay, so you don't actually care to be challenged on this. If every single time we get to the issue, you just fall back to, well, they haven't demanded this, or nobody, they didn't do that. Okay, well, I'm the one here saying that I have an issue with this. I'm the one here arguing for the issue. If no matter what I say, there's nothing I can say about anything without you saying that it's all, you know, it's all just going to be based on whether or not they challenged you on it, then you just tell me what it is that you've been challenged on from other people, so that now I know what I am and I'm not allowed to challenge you on. Like, just go ahead and give me a list of, you say there have been no corrections, so therefore I'm not allowed to challenge you on anything in the fucking article. So conversation over.
Looked at her positions and decided whether or not that was correct.
Well, Taylor,
this is how journalism
opinion
works.
But Taylor, her opinion is not especially relevant. Like, if you're
Olivia's?
saying that the language,
Olivia's
if you're saying that the centrist language
oh my God.
Was not something that you picked, is that your way of saying that you're kind of distancing yourself from that language?
I would have, until this conversation, called Olivia Giuliana a centrist because she's a Democrat in a red state. And I would imagine that most people that are the Democrats in the red states lean to the center. Also, when I had spoken to her years ago.
That makes a bit more sense. That makes a bit more sense. Cause yeah, I am a Democrat in a red state, and I've had to like explain this to people a lot, that like here in Georgia, like we have just a different culture than like, you know, some fucking Democrat in Portland or, you know, Colorado or some shit. Like we're like gonna be very pro-gun and you know, have a bit more affinity for like the Confederate flag, or like these are going to be maybe even not an affinity, but these are going to be like normal parts of our lives, to where somebody else, if they just see somebody with a Confederate flag, they're immediately like, oh, that person's a fucking neo-Nazi, like, because that's not something that they've experienced from people that they would identify with whatsoever. Whereas here, like, centrist is definitely derogatory. It depends on who uses it. Like, I've called myself a centrist for a long time. Like, I'm not offended by people calling me a centrist, depending on who says it. If people in Pisco's chat, Pisco or Soy Pills chat call me a centrist, yeah, I'm definitely going to be offended by it. People in Hutch's chat call me a centrist. No, I'm not offended by it at all. Like, it 100% depends on who calls me a centrist in those cases, because in their chats, when they call me a centrist, they're calling me a right-winger. Like, they're calling me a right-winger, or they're calling me like a fence sitter with no real positions, or they're calling me milquetoast. Like, when they say those terms, they're saying like, I don't have real principles, I don't have real values. They're using the term derogatorily. Whereas like when I call somebody a centrist, I'm not using it derogatorily. I'm not I don't think of it as an insult at all.
That was my understanding of her. And also, that's, again, we did not receive any criticism of this. This is the first criticism that I've even heard of this.
Well,
so
I think it's important because I do think that it was.
I'm sorry you feel this way, but this is just completely
you don't need to apologize to me. I'm just.
I'm sorry you feel this way.
Completely unproductive.
I feel like you're becoming quite defensive and evasive right now.
No, it's frustrating
I feel like
I'm dealing with the white nationalists, because this is all I do all day is go back and forth with the white nationalists.
Hutch is bald by choice, but it's not because of that.
It is the same ridiculous argument where it's like, oh,
you think the questions that I asked you amount to like being questioned by a white nationalist?
I will tell you, they are the
much.
exact. Why don't you listen? They are the exact same words you're using, the exact same method of.
Again, I wish they would use this to their advantage. She is giving them a fucking layup with this analogy every time. Every fucking time. She is handing them a huge layup every time she says this.
Saying, right, when we write about Tucker Carlson, and I've gone back and forth with Tucker Carlson's team on this exact issue, right? We'll say, well, we characterize you as XYZ, far right, right? Far right is actually even more common than the right with white nationalists. And every time I write about a right-wing influencer and we say, well, we are, you know, whatever, here's the article, here, we're asking you for comment, blah, 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 blah. They will say, I'm not far right. I'm not far right. I'm progressive. In some cases, they even say, even Tim Pool types, I'm actually progressive. Okay, but
Taylor, I think
they're not. Just let me finish.
Well,
So
Taylor,
my
you've been cutting me off this whole time.
well,
Respectfully.
okay, respectfully, all I am saying is that when you're writing an article, we do our best to be accurate. Now, if Olivia Juliana is not a centrist and that's so inaccurate, again, she could happily request a correction.
It was kind of stupid for Pisco to be like, well, why don't you just ask her? It's like, he did ask her at the very fucking beginning. That's how he started off. He said, like, don't you use this term in a derogatory way? She said no. She's been denying it the entire time. That's been the obvious implication of the entire fucking argument, is that she's using this term in a derogatory way in the article. And then Pisco comes up, well, why don't you just ask her if she was using it in a just ask her if it's a derogatory way. Just ask her. Just, you know, hey, Taylor, did you use it in a derogatory way? What the fuck do you think the whole conversation is about? She could have just from the beginning, she literally said at the beginning, she never uses the term centrist in a derogatory way. She literally said it at the beginning. She never does that. So why the fuck would he ask her, hey, person who says she never uses the term this way, did you use the term that way? Why the fuck would he ask that question? I was trying to like wrap my brain around it as it happened, but it's so fucking weird that Pisco said that. Just ask her. Just ask her.
Wired. She never did. No
well,
one.
Hutch, can I reframe this? Because like
ever raised.
The point is not necessarily whether or not it's accurate to call her a centrist. If this was like the specific pedantic sticking point, I can see this like, oh, this is for. Well, but no, but it's not. What Hutch is getting at is that this article is clearly viewed as, hey, we're painting these chorus people who are taking this money as these kind of shills, these DNC operatives who are just paid to get these talking points and just repeat exactly what the do-nothing centrist Dems do, right? And that's kind of where the perspective that he's saying this is kind of like an opinionated.
That's taking a lot from an article that doesn't say a lot, and I don't doubt that that's how TikTokers were taking it, and that's not how TikTokers and people on Instagram threads are taking it. But if you actually read the article, you will see that it is quite clear what we say. And this is not a DNC.
Listen.
This is poor Shelby at the DNC had to like literally kept being like, guys, this is not a DNC program. Obviously, they support the DNC. But the DNC has its own influencer program.
On August 27th, you tweeted, the 90 influencers involved appear to be primarily centrist, pro-DNC,
yes,
who have not spoken about Palestine, are pro-Israel. Those are your words.
Yes.
But you just said a moment ago, you're kind of distancing yourself from that framing.
No, I didn't.
Well, and in the Destiny conversation, she said that like she never meant to imply that these people were anti-Palestinian or pro-Israel, or that this group was meant to be pro-Israel or blah blah blah. Like she straight up denied that in their conversation when we went through her fucking Blue Sky account and found that she was retweeting everybody who was saying that the DNC was paying these people not to talk about Israel Palestine. She was fucking retweeting people all over the fucking place saying that that was exactly the case, while she's over here saying, what? I never meant to imply that. I don't know where people would have gotten that from. That's not my position. I didn't say that in the article.
What are you talking about?
That's what Toy Pill just confronted you with, and you said, well, I can understand why people walked away with that, but those are your words.
I'm sorry. They are centrist. Like, again, if Olivia Juliana is not a centrist, and that is factually wrong, and these people are not centrist, and this is factually wrong, that these content creators that are making content.
Well, no, again, you should point out that, well, Olivia Juliana is pro-Palestine. Like, so it doesn't fit even what you're saying it is.
With Chuck Schumer, that are making content with Hakeem Jeffries. If they are not, if I was wrong, if this article is wrong and it's factually wrong, then I highly encourage them to ask for a correction. But no one has asked for a correction. Can we do it step by step? Saying that they are not centrist. No one.
Let's just do it step by step. Hutch, is it your contention that it's inaccurate to call Olivia Juliana a centrist?
I do believe that, yes, and I think that she
In
used
virtue
that
of
word
what?
intentionally. Well, I don't know why you're
Well,
playing
no,
dumb here.
se-
You understand that when Taylor uses
separate
that
the
word, it's a pejorative.
No, hang on. So
You
separate
understand
that
that,
intent.
Kisco.
So
You do.
you can make a critique of an article based on its accuracy or based on whether there's some bad motive.
I'm
in
trying
using
to
that
get
term.
to a larger.
Is it your contention? I know, but let's just do it step by step. Let's do it step by step, right? Is it inaccurate? And so, and if it's inaccurate, why is it inaccurate?
It's inaccurate because her policy priorities do not line up with what any reasonable person would assert to be a centrist. When you look at the things that she's advocating for. Okay, that's fine.
I mean, you can say you can just make this argument about anything.
But what does it mean to be pro-DNC or pro-Israel?
They want
like the part that they started off with is, do you think it's necessary to disclose your political bias? And she started off by saying, like, well, no, not necessarily. You know, I am writing it from an objective standpoint. So blah blah blah. That was the whole contention at the beginning, and so their point isn't just whether or not it's accurate, but that her bias leads her to view things from a very different lens, which is why I really wish they would just use the fucking Tucker Carlson analogy as a sticking point to say, yes, that is correct. Exactly.
What does that mean?
So pro-DNC means pro-Democrat, like pro sort of the Democrat establishment, what I would say, which is very much Corus's goal. And pro-Israel means that the majority of people that we found that were public, which is why I think it's so crucial for them to actually release these names publicly, because I think if this is not the majority view held among their creators, they should release these names publicly to make it clear what is the ideological makeup of their Corus class. But a lot of the people that we found were also pro-Israel, meaning they were expressing support for Israel. Against and
how many creators out of like all the creators that you saw would you say were posting pro-Israel posts? Can you name names there?
Well, that's the point, right? Is that they haven't published the roster. They haven't published the roster, but a decent amount of ones that we checked.
Did anybody in the people that you mentioned in the article, so like Olivia Packman, Brian Tyler Cohen, did any of them post pro-Israel content?
You'll have to go check their specific feeds, but Brian Tyler Cohen.
You claim that they were primarily pro-Israel, right?
Yeah, well, some people that are pro-Israel just don't speak about the genocide in Gaza at all, for instance, and that's another
thing. Thing as being pro-Israel.
Yes, because a way that pro-Israel narratives have been shaped by the media is by not mentioning the genocide. So intentionally refusing to cover the genocide, especially as it was this politically relevant topic.
Is that what you were alleging?
No, I'm just saying, like, if you look at the pro-Israel kind of creator landscape, there's a range of pro-Israel people. There's people that are straight up making content with the IDF. They're super overt about it. And then there are people that are a little bit more behind the scenes, people that are a little bit quieter about it. They might not be overt, but they're still.
But by the way, that you're suggesting that if somebody chooses not to discuss the genocide in Gaza, and like that makes them pro-Israel. I find that to be
no, that's not what I said.
That's not what she said. Yeah, that's not what she said. She's saying that this is like, this is almost like a dog whistle sort of thing, or like something that you would use as a way of like deciphering that. Like if somebody, you know, talks about the Jews in a certain way, or they use like the term like the Jews or those blacks, or, you know, something like that, like you can kind of get a vibe from it. And she's saying that like she's doing a vibe check on a lot of them, saying that if they don't talk about this thing that is like the most politically relevant thing in a time, that they just completely ignore it, that this is somebody who's probably ignoring it for a reason. I'm trying to remember the fucking word that I always forget, but it's it just means that like it's kind of something that you can use as a way to like decipher something without it being explicit. I forget the fucking term that I'm looking for, but
that's not what I said.
Wait a second.
What I said is that some people, no, what I said is that some people who are pro-Israel, they're the way that they sort of the way that their content manifests is that they are not as overt. So what they'll do is they'll try to tamp down discussion. They'll be sometimes deleting comments, a lot of times just intentionally ignoring the issue, or when they're asked, to interview a politician, especially this was a big issue in the lead up to the 2024 election, you had people saying, like, sort of minimizing the issue, attempting to minimize it, attempting not to get people on the left to talk about it.
Okay,
and
does that
some creators
qualify,
in that program
does that apply to any creator that was mentioned in your article?
Well, you'll have to go through and do an audit of all of their content, but it's certainly
Well, isn't that your job though? You made the claim.
Yeah,
if you're making the claim, they're asking if you're making the claim based on these things. What do you mean? What the fuck?
The group was primarily pro-Israel. Isn't it your job to go through their
from the group that we saw? From the amount of creators that we saw, that was a common theme. But that wasn't necessarily a...
You didn't say a common theme. You said they were primarily pro-Israel.
Yeah, from the group of creators that we saw, that we were evaluating.
So I'll ask again, was anybody that you mentioned in your article someone that you would say was pro-Israel?
Well, you'll have to go look at the article and figure that out for yourself based on the creators.
Wait,
not
I'm
all of the
with
creators.
you. I don't understand.
But we're not...
Oh my goodness, I cannot believe she's fucking doing this again. What the fuck is she... There's no way, dude. He's being very clear. You're the one who made the claim. He's asking you, based on your assessment, if that's the case. What the fuck is she doing, dude?
There's a lot of creators that we spoke to for this article that we know are in chorus that weren't mentioned in the article.
I'm just asking you if anyone in your article you consider to be pro-Israel.
Well, I don't know. You'll have to, I really don't. I don't remember which creators that we named and didn't name off the top of our head, but I think you can just go and look at them and frankly ask the creators themselves. That's a great thing to do. I just don't know why you would say
that 90 influencers were primarily pro-Israel, but you can't name.
No. We said 90. We said the creators that we were able to suss out as being part of the program. So one thing that we asked is for them to publish a roster so that people could take a broader look. Maybe this is just a section, right? Maybe this is just a small section.
So it could be an unrepresentative section.
Exactly. It could be a totally unrepresentative section. They could have.
But what was the methodology to decipher whether they're pro-Israel? Was it
mostly whether like their own statements or whether they had shown up in other influencer, like pro sort of Israel influencer efforts broadly. I mean, there are people also that I've talked to in this program that identify as Zionists privately and don't want to identify as a Zionist publicly. So I'm not trying to put specific creators on blast. I actually don't think that being pro or anti-Israel was ever something that was necessarily something that would get you in or out of chorus at all, but it clearly is a...
That's useful to clear up. So
yeah,
as you sit here,
I said that after this array went up too, yeah.
But in your...
Go ahead, Hutch.
But in your conversation on current affair, you did absolutely buy into the manufacturing logic that those hosts were presenting, which they were saying, that they were heavily suggesting that the creators that were invited into chorus were chosen because they were not speaking up about Gaza.
So you're talking about a guy that used to work for Brian Tyler Cohen, who was working.
No, I understand that, but you agree with that framing.
For David Pakman. Well, listen,
David
I'm not going to
Pakman,
disagree
yes.
with whatever he wants to say. Was his experience
Not
working
Brian
for David
Tyler
Pakman,
Cohen.
one of the leaders of chorus? This is his former
He was
producer.
commenting on your reporting. He was going beyond his experience, and he was suggesting that chorus was choosing creators because they were not speaking up about Israel.
He said that
he was using her article as evidence to his claims. He was using her article as evidence to his experience, saying that she was backing up his experience here. That is what he was doing.
He was told when he worked for David Pakman that they were not supposed to be overt about the Israel stuff.
No,
and you can go back and listen to that and take issue with that. But he worked for David Pakman. I'm not going to argue with him working for David Pakman.
Taylor, he was speaking about your reporting.
I'm not going to argue with him working for David Pakman. What the fuck is happening? What the fuck is going on?
His job, he worked for David Pakman. He was David Pakman's producer, so he would know better than anyone whether David Pakman, what his boundaries were around issues related to Israel and what sort of content they wanted to put up. He would know. He was literally David Pakman's producer.
Oh my goodness. He came out when her article was published as stating that her article was backing up his experience, and he was coming out about his experience because her article was this thing to shed a light on it, so that now he felt comfortable coming out and talking about it. That this is what happened. Like he was very clear about this, that she was outing this for him so that he could come out and talk about it. This is not just him talking about his experience. He's saying her article was what was backing up his experience.